Let's listen to the famous book Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. Level B1, Oxford Reading University.
You will find Part 1 in the description and on our channel. Part 2.
7. Maddie had set the table, but Ethan was so mad he could hardly eat. He pushed the plate away and walked up to Maddie. He caught her in his arms and kissed her on the lips. When he released her, she looked at him in horror. "You can't leave, Maddie," he cried out. "What is wrong, Ethan? Tell me," she asked. "Is Zena mad at me? Does she want me to leave?" Ethan told her that Zena intended to employ another girl. They sat silently together for a long while before he asked, "Where could you possibly go, Maddie? You're never going to find a job. There's no bright future ahead of you. But I won't let Zena destroy your life. I will." He couldn't finish. Maddie raised her hand as if trying to warn him against something. He turned around to see Zena in the doorway. She slowly made her way to the table and seated herself between Ethan and Maddie without saying a word. She helped herself to a good meal and poured herself some tea. Ethan watched her silently without even pretending to eat his dinner. Maddie tried to bring up a careless conversation about her health. When Zena was done with the food, she stood up sharply and said, "I always feel sick after your pie, Matt. I shall take some of my stomach powder." She left the kitchen. Maddie and Ethan exchanged worried looks. He headed out of the room to catch some fresh air but ran into Zena in the doorway. She held the broken pieces of the red dish. "I'd like to know who has done this," she said quietly. Her face was turning pale like a ghost's. "It was your cat," Ethan spoke up. Zena gave him an angry look. "I never knew my cat was clever enough to put the broken pieces edge to edge back in the cupboard," she said. "I'm the only one guilty of it, Zena," Maddie cried. "I took it from the cupboard to make the table look lovely." "And therefore allowed yourself kindly to use the only dish I'd kept away from you and everybody else," said Zena in a shaking voice. She was about to cry. "People warned me plenty of times that you were bad. If I had listened to them, you wouldn't have been here and all this wouldn't have happened." 8. Ethan was lying on the couch in his small study, thinking. He remembered a story from over the mountain. A man approximately his age had left his wife and escaped with the girl he loved. His wife sold his farmhouse, started her own lunchroom, and did pretty well. The man married the girl. Ethan saw them in the summer. They appeared cheerful and happy and had a lovely daughter that looked like a princess. "Maddie and I can run away too," he thought and jumped to his feet with excitement. "I will leave everything to Zena and start over in the West." His eyes fell on a newspaper sheet that said, "Trips to the West, tickets at a discount." When he saw the price of the tickets, he silently put the paper to the side and returned to the couch, crying. He couldn't even afford to get there. The beauty of the clear night seemed to laugh at his miserable state. He fell asleep and woke up the following day. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Maddie in the doorway. "Have you been here all night?" she asked. "You must be frozen." She drew a step closer. "How did you know I was here?" asked Ethan. "I heard you come down after I went to bed," she said. "Then I listened all night, but you never came up." Ethan was moved when he thought that she cared for him. They went to the kitchen together and he lit a fire. "Listen, Matt, you shouldn't worry about anything," he said, putting his hand softly on her shoulder. "I won't, Ethan," she promised, "and neither should you." "Have you talked to Zena this morning?" he asked. "I haven't seen her yet," said Maddie, shaking her head. "No matter what she says to you, try to ignore her," said Ethan, and went outside to cut some wood. He couldn't stand the thought of Maddie not being around anymore. Suddenly it occurred to him that he could still persuade Andrew Hale to pay him. "He is aware of Zena's illness," thought Ethan. "If I tell him that I need money to hire a servant for her, he will never reject me. After all, he is a kind, honest man. If I carry out my plan successfully, nothing will keep me away from Maddie." He hurried to the Hales' farmhouse. In the yard, he saw Mrs. Hale get out of their sleigh. She gave him a gentle, motherly smile. "I heard that Zena has gotten worse," she said. "I'm glad she has you, Ethan. And your mother was just as lucky. I've always believed that. You've had an awfully hard time, Ethan Frome. Ethan watched her walk all the way to the house. For the first time in his whole life, someone was sorry for him, and he suddenly felt less lonely. In the light of the kind words he had just heard, he saw what he was about to do. He wanted to lie to the only two people who were kind to him and felt sorry for him. He turned sharply and walked toward his farmhouse. 9. Ethan found his wife sitting by the fire in the kitchen and reading a book. "Where's Maddie?" he asked. "She's upstairs, packing her bags," said Zena, without taking her eyes off the book. He hurried to Maddie's room and found her sitting on top of her bag, crying. He put his hand on her shoulder and kissed her on the head. "Please, Matt, stop crying," he asked. "I feared I was never going to see you again," she said, holding him tight by the arm. They heard Zena's call and separated. Ethan carried Maddie's bag down the stairs. It seemed to him that his heart was tied with a rope that an unseen hand was pulling tighter with every tick of the clock. At dinner, Ethan couldn't bring himself to eat anything. Unlike him, Zena ate well, enjoying every bite of her meal. She said that mild weather always made her feel better. "At what time should Jotham come for Maddie?" she asked in a careless voice. "He shouldn't," replied Ethan. "I will drive her over myself." "I need you to stay and prepare the room for the hired girl," said Zena. "I'm driving Matt to the station," repeated Ethan sharply. Soon Zena retired to the bedroom to rest after dinner. She didn't say goodbye to Maddie. Ethan walked Maddie out of the house, carrying her heavy bag. He was bothered by the most unpleasant thoughts. "From this day on, whenever I return home, Maddie is not going to be there," he told himself over and over again, as if trying to force himself to believe it. He helped Maddie climb into the sleigh, and they headed to the train station. 10. "We've got plenty of time for a good ride, Matt," said Ethan as they reached the gate. He turned the sleigh sharply to the right. "Are you going round by the lake?" asked Maddie. She didn't seem surprised at all. "I am," said Ethan, smiling at her. They entered a small forest that surrounded the lake and took a short walk. The sun was already setting, and its soft red light poured over the lake covered with a thin layer of ice. Ethan and Maddie sat down on the ground at the very spot where they had once sat. They started remembering all the pleasant things they had experienced together. As the sky began to grow darker, Maddie stood up. "We have to go, Ethan," she said. They drove silently across the snowy road. "Matt, what are you going to do?" asked Ethan. "I'll try to get a job somewhere," she replied. "Maybe you could ask your relatives to lend you some money," suggested Ethan. "I don't require any help from them," said Maddie, and they went silent. "You know I'd do anything I could for you, right, Matt?" asked Ethan. "Of course," Maddie replied quietly. "Oh, Matt, tell me, would you run away with me if you could?" Ethan kept questioning her, nearly crying. "What difference does it make now?" she asked. "Tell me," he shouted. I frequently dreamed about it myself on those restless nights when the thoughts of you kept me awake," said Maddie in a low voice. Ethan's heart raced. "I can't suffer anymore, Ethan. I wish I were dead," she cried out. They reached the gate of Starkfield, but neither Ethan nor Maddie could get off the sleigh. They heard bells ringing and turned around to see a group of children pulling a sled toward the hill. "That reminds me, Maddie," said Ethan. "We were going to ride yesterday." She laughed softly. But Ethan grew serious all of a sudden. "Do you want to do it now?" "Ethan, we don't have time for that," protested Maddie. "The hired girl will be waiting for you at the station." "Whatever," he said carelessly. "If she didn't have to wait, you would." And they made their way to the hill. They found a forgotten sled outside Ruth Varnum's house. "It must be Ned's," guessed Ethan. They picked it up and climbed up the hill. The sled started with a jump, and they flew on through the dark, gathering speed as they went. Maddie was laughing excitedly all the way down. Ethan carried the sled back to where it had been, and suddenly Maddie held him tight in her arms. "Is this where you saw Ruth and Ned kissing?" she asked softly and kissed him on the lips before he could answer. "Goodbye, Ethan," she cried. "I can't let you go now, Matt," said Ethan. "We can't live without each other." She remained silent for a while, but then threw herself at him all of a sudden, pressing her wet cheek against his face. "Ethan, we must ride one more time," she cried. "But you must lead us right into the big tree at the bottom of the hill, and we will never have to be apart from each other. I can never live without you, Ethan. And to think, a strange girl coming to the farmhouse and sleeping in the bed where I'd spent so many nights dreaming of you." Her every word was like a tiny piece torn from his heart. He hated to think of his life in the farmhouse without Maddie. He picked up the sled, and they climbed up the hill. Maddie sat behind him and put her arms around his chest. Ethan kissed her one last time, and the sled started. Ethan led it directly to the tree. He never took his eyes off it. "It's waiting for us," he thought, when suddenly Zena's frightening face appeared before his eyes, and he moved his hand sharply. At the last moment, he righted the sled toward the tree, and a blow of wind burned his face. The sled crashed. Ethan opened his eyes to see the clear night sky. The sled weighed him down to the ground. His hand rested on something soft. He thought it was the hair of a small animal, but it turned out to be Maddie's hair. He moved closer to her. "Oh, Matt, I thought we managed to get it all over with," he said quietly. She never responded. Her eyes were wide open, but she looked through him, and her lips moved slowly, calling out his name. 11. I entered Ethan Frome's kitchen and saw two gray-haired women sitting there. One of them stood up at the sight of me to set the table. She was tall and wore a torn, untidy dress. Her thin face looked bloodless. The other turned her head toward me but remained seated. She was pale too and looked sickly. Frome noted that it was very cold in the room. "Zena was responsible for lighting a fire, but she fell asleep," cried the seated woman. "I've nearly frozen to death." The tall woman put a plate with fruit on the table, and Ethan introduced her. "This is my wife, Mrs. Frome. And this," he pointed to the seated woman, "is Miss Maddie Silver." I stayed for the night at Frome's farmhouse. Early in the morning, I returned to Ruth Hale's house. She was glad to see that I was safe and unhurt. "You are the first stranger that appeared in Ethan's house in many years," she said. "Seeing all three of them together is horrible. They all suffer. Even Maddie is no longer the lovely, cheerful girl she used to be before the accident. And when I look Ethan in the eyes, I see nothing but pain." "Has Maddie stayed with the Fromes ever since the accident?" I wondered. "Yes," said Ruth. "Zena took her back to the farmhouse and has been looking after her and Ethan for 20 years, though she can hardly look after herself." She fell silent for a long while. Then she looked hard at me and said, "There was a time when everyone thought Maddie was as good as dead. I tell you, I'm sorry that she survived. That miserable life can hardly be called life at all, and if she had died, Ethan might have lived. But the way he is now, the way all three of them are, is not much different from their dead relatives who lie buried in the graveyard, except that those underground lie peacefully, and their women keep quiet."
English audiobooks, courses with your favorite movie heroes, awesome word games, and much more. The whole English classroom for your level in one place in the EWA app. There are thousands of English books you can read, grammar and vocabulary lessons with popular movie characters. Stop wasting your time. Go to appewa.com right now.
If you're not subscribed to our channel, you might never see our videos again because of the YouTube algorithm. Press like and hit the bell button to always get our free audiobooks first. Books like this one.